In this video, we will learn about grid and how it affects garments. 3D simulation of garments in V-Stitcher uses a grid overlay to help with fabric physics and drape of the garment on a body. To see the grid, we go into Prepare mode. We can configure the grid height and width for each square of the grid on each piece. The more points on the grid, the greater the detail shown in the simulation. For example, let's look at this bag of polygons. Imagine the polygons that make up the bag are like the grid of a garment. On this bag where the grid is larger, it has fewer points. The curves look edgy and sharp. Whereas, when the grid is smaller, it has more points. The curves and edges are smoother. This applies the same way to a 3D garment. The bigger the grid, the fewer the points, and the less detail and more rough edges are displayed. The smaller the grid, the more points on the grid, the greater the detail and more smooth edges are displayed, a more refined draping. We can use this logic to help us best display our garments. To adjust the grid size, we use the Select tool to click on a pattern piece and then go to the Context view in the Draping Properties section. The default grid size for all patterns is 1. 1 would be the maximum grid size we would recommend to use. It is completely okay to use the default grid size for bigger pattern pieces or garments which do not require such small details. For example, a basic t-shirt. As another example, the bodice patterns in this garment may not need to have a grid size as low as the sleeves. You can reduce the grid size by typing in the value in the box. Typically, we gradually decrease the grid size until we think it looks okay. Here we can see the difference between a grid size of 1 and a grid size of 0.4. Adjusting the grid from the default can correct some simulation issues, where the avatar shows through the garment, where another garment piece shows through the garment, where the garment simulation is not true to life. Here are some tips. We recommend only changing the grid size after you have completed the garment and are satisfied with the overall simulation of the garment. Also, note that the minimum grid size is 0.1, but it's best to not go below 0.3. A grid size lower than that means the simulation would be much slower because there are more details on the garment to simulate. If you do have any simulation changes that need to be done after you have lowered the grid size, remember Fast Mode. Fast Mode temporarily displays the grid size for all pattern pieces to 1, and so displays less details. This helps speed up the simulation so that it is easy for you to do styling. Once you are satisfied with the garment simulation, disable the Fast Mode to allow your patterns to return to the assigned grid size. Adjusting the grid size is a crucial step when refining and enhancing the look of garments. It can be essential when working on smaller garments like baby wear or small pattern pieces like locker loops, plackets, tabs. It's equally useful when working on details like shirring, pleats, folds, or when working on puffy garments. And that's how to use the grid. For more information, visit support.browseware.com.